Hello crafters and welcome to the September 2023 Marvelous Monthly Serials video hop by Altenew. My name is Deepa and today I'm going to be showing you how I created one of these cards here. They both have the same sort of look, but I am going to be creating the pink one on the right. The one in gray was the one I created for the release as inspiration. So as always, Altenew is giving away $300 in prizes, so please don't forget to comment down below and please do like and subscribe to all of the other beautiful designers on this hop, including myself. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the products we're using today. I'm going to be focusing on the Dynamic Duo Wildflower Bouquet. I thought this was just gorgeous. I had to use it. It has a coordinating die, stencils, and also a stamp set. Here's one of the cards that I created with it. This one has a lot of dimension, as you can see. Now you can actually use the stamp to fill in all of the little details on these flowers, or like myself, you can use a jelly pen or anything else. On the second card I created here, I didn't use any of those detail bits. I just used the ink and it gives such a nice soft look. This was the card that I had originally created, and you can see that there's a lot of dimension there as well. I used some foam there to back that up, and we'll get into that as we create our card. So to get started, you can see that there is a layering guide with the stencils, and this is one of those stencils that kind of you have to rotate left and right in order to get it to work. Now I do recommend starting off with the first one, because the way that the stencil works is once you've put down that first layer of ink, like here, you're gonna see that there's an imprint on the stencil that's gonna line up with that first layer. So you can see here I'm lining up that imprint with the first two leaf fronds, and then it lines up the next bit that I'm gonna layer on here. So I'm using a bunch of the fresh dye inks here, and I'm using Fern Forest, Eucalyptus, and I forget what this one is, but it's the in-between color there. And it's just going to give you just a nice array of different greens, which really is what you see in a wildflower group or bouquet of wildflowers, right? So I've gone ahead and I've done the first two layers. I've then kind of rotated the stencil, lined up the little imprints or the registration marks, you could call them. And now I'm adding the third color. So this is the Fern Forest. Now, actually, sorry, I got my colors wrong there. So the first color I used was Sage Silver, or Silver Sage, sorry. Then I used Eucalyptus, and now I'm using the Fern Forest. You could use these colors in any in any order you want for any of these leaves. They all look gorgeous together. Now I like this line of fresh dye inks because the colors vary so much. They work well together, but they vary enough that they look different enough that it creates a lot of interest. So now I'm going to the second stencil, and on this one you've got all of the petals. So we have a bunch of different flowers here. I'm going to do some light stenciling. So I'm not going to add too much ink. I'm going to come in with a softer hand, and I'm going to make the centers a little bit darker. And you can see that as I rotate the brush around, it's kind of catching the edge a little bit darker than, say, like the top edge is a little bit darker than the bottom edge. And that's the look I'm going for here. It just gives a really nice soft look, and that little bit of darkness and the variation in the amount of ink gives you more depth, and that's what I'm going for. So I've used some pink diamond on that main flower. I've got some amethyst on the lavender flower there. I added some frosty red on those little daisies, and then I've also got some, what am I using here? I think I'm using Morning Frost on the flower to give it sort of an off-white grayish look. And then I'll go ahead and I'll rotate the stencil, and I'll add all of these colors again to fill in the rest of the petals and make those flowers more full. So you can see on the first card that I showed you as one of the cards that I created, it had a lot of blues and pinks. I used a really heavy hand and got darker, deep colors. You could go for that look if you wanted, or you could use this lighter, soft, wispy look. The stencil set is perfect for that soft look. And you'll see once I take it off how gorgeous that actually looks. Now we're going to go back to the first stencil, and you'll notice that I kind of missed a spot there on the lavender, so the stem of the lavender, so I'm adding that in. And then I'm going to come in with the last bunches of flowers for those two lavender stems on the right side. And again, I just used the amethyst. Now, I did forget to add the center of my flower. So there's 3 little dots there in the first stencil where we used, where we had layered on those leaves. And I'm just going to use some Rocky Shore and espresso ink to add some dimension and fill in those centers of those flowers with ink. Now you could just add 1 layer of color and then add the details on this stamp set here, but I decided just to use the ink for the flower centers. I'm going to use the details on the lavender and on the center of the largest flower. Now, sorry, my head gets a bit in the way there, but you can see once you add the details, it really gives it a lot of depth and it looks really nice. Now, I'm just using some silver stone ink here. I'm not using any specific color. The silver stone just adds, it's not too gray that you can't tell that it doesn't match. So it just adds that little bit of detail without having to pick out colors that are the exact same as your flowers. So I'll go ahead and add that for the lavender and the center flower, and it looks gorgeous. So now for my background. Now you'll notice on the original card that I'm using as inspiration. So I'm using my own card as inspiration. I do this a lot just to kind of change up the cards I'm making just a little bit and maybe create like a few of the same kind, but to change up maybe the color or maybe a bit of the design or something. So anyways, the background has that main large sentiment there stamped out on a diagonal repeatedly. So I'm going to use my stamp wheel for this. It really doesn't take too much to line everything up. You really just, I didn't use a ruler or anything. I just eyeballed it because it's so large. It's very easy to do. And all I used as a guide for lining it up was the bottom of the word kindness. So where all the letters line up at the bottom, that was kind of my line where I'd kind of say, okay, now I'll take this and I'll move it down. I'll line up this line with that line underneath the kindness at the top, the one that I stamped previously, and so on and so forth. Now, I do want to mention that as I did this, it's important that once you do stamp down one of your images, wipe off your stamp before you reposition it, because any of the leftover ink on your stamp is just going to basically mess up your background. Now I actually end up doing that, I think here, and then I realize, oh, I've got a bit of smudging, but don't worry too much, because if you smudge little areas in the center, now remember the card, that whole wildflower bouquet is going to cover a lot of the center of the card, so you really want it perfect along the left and the top edge. So now I'll just finish this up. I have a couple more to stamp out. Now you can see the ones that are off the edge. What tends to happen is that my stamp sticks to the sticky mat at the bottom. So I just added an extra piece of cardstock in behind my panel there so that it wouldn't stick and I could still, you know, pick it up, position it and pick it up with my plate. So moving on, I'm going to do my heat embossing for my sentiment since I've got the stamp set out. So I realized that I did actually cut the sentiment for, I guess, another card, but that's okay. All you have to do is kind of piece it back together and pick it up with your acrylic block or your stamp positioner. And it's just like brand new. So I wanted to keep that footage in there for those of you who are very apprehensive about cutting your stamps. It's really not a big deal. As you can see, it's easily placed back together. And now I've just stamped it out with some Versamark ink. I'm heat embossing it with some white embossing powder on the black, and you can see I'm getting rid of any strays there. And of course the anti-static powder tool is a must for heat embossing white or anything like that on a darker cardstock. And now I'm going to go ahead and cut out that wildflower bouquet. So I'm taking the coordinating die, I'm lining it up. Now, as long as you stenciled all those layers using the registration marks like I mentioned, it should line up perfectly. So I've cut this out. I'm also going to cut it out of some white foam. So just some plain white foam. And I've got to kind of use a pick to get out all of the little bits there. And you can see that it lines up perfectly here. I'll just go ahead and attach the actual panel to the foam. And you could use some liquid glue for this. I'm just using some dot runner here, and I'll attach the main bit at the bottom, and then you can see I can move things around and place them and get them lined up. I'll go ahead and attach the panel to the card base. Then I can go ahead and attach this beautiful dimensional wildflower bouquet. And this time I'm adding liquid adhesive. So this is just going to allow me to move this around, and it's actually the easiest thing to add because I find the tape runner doesn't stick so well to the foam when I'm adding it. So I'll just go ahead, place this down. I like how the wildflower bouquet looks kind of hanging off the edge there. So that's why you'll see I added the panel like more to the top left rather than, you know, centered or anything like that. I like how it kind of hangs off the right and the bottom there. So I've used an acrylic block to kind of weigh it down a bit and add some pressure. And once I think that's nice and good, I'll go ahead and attach the sentiment strip. Now I added one piece of foam because it is going to be lifted up a bit on the right edge. And then the rest I can attach with plain glue. Then once that's done, I can cut off all the overhanging bits, and it comes down to our final step here, which is embellishments. So on the original card I showed you there, I added some AB faceted gems, and they have a bit of a pinkish tone, so it goes well with the flowers that were added and stands out on the gray background. Now this one has the pink background, so I thought that the AB kind of bubble gems would look the best there. So these are my two final cards that I'm sharing with you. You can see that the Wildflower Dynamic Duo is absolutely gorgeous. This is definitely one of my favorites from the release. There is a link to the store in the description below, so don't forget to check that out if you're looking to get this. And please don't forget to like and subscribe, visit the other talented designers, and don't forget to comment for your chance to win. Good luck to all of you. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.